So amazingly, the big question this week has been about Karrion Kross and Scarlett, who have left WWE. But of course, the intrigue comes in the fact that maybe they haven't. So it really is a brand new world we are living in. I mean, WWE and all wrestling companies since the early days of my brain have always tried to do this. Like, how many occasions have you been like, oh, I don't know whether it's a work or I don't know whether it's a shoot, to use all the proper terms. And then sometimes you figure out it's gone one way, sometimes it's gone the other way. Sometimes we try and do this and it's absolutely appalling and we're ashamed and we never want to talk about wrestling again. And this one comes at a very interesting time, and I do not think it's a coincidence. But again, before we do get anywhere, a few things actually. Let's do some housekeeping, whatever it's called. One, I know nothing. This is a completely speculative video and done because it's fun to make editorial videos like this. Some people go, what'd you make this for? Well, you got to do something with your life, so you may as well do this. But also, I'm a big fan of Karrion Kross and Scarlett. I think they just have something about them. Like, so many times people are looking for an explanation, or they want to put their finger on it, or they ask you, why do you like them? Sometimes you just shrug because they come on my television and they intrigue me, they interest me, and I want to see in what direction they're going to go. And actually, you can see this in all my other content. I very much enjoyed the Sami Zayn Karrion Kross series of matches because where it came in the card, it felt so old school and so different and so what I'm even looking for. But it was a methodical pace to it that I'm like, wow, this actually stands out because it doesn't actually feel like anything else. Although, as I also said, the SummerSlam match didn't hit as home for me as much as I wanted it to. But we're talking about minor things right here. I just think if you're a babyface and somebody hits you with a pipe, you should be allowed to hit them back with a pipe. But we talked about that. I don't want to go back. I'm just trying to give you the lay of the land here. But I certainly think that in the scope of what professional wrestling is, they have certainly found a niche which is tying in to what is happening now. Because if you were going to read a headline, you would find out that their contracts did expire this week. They weren't on Raw. They haven't been on Raw for the past couple of weeks. People then went, oh man, the experiment is dead because no one chanted his name on Raw, which is the craziest thing I've ever heard. This is the real issue. Well, it's one of the things I want to touch upon today. You have two camps at the moment. Some people that are dialed into this and really want to see where it's going and sort of confused about what the outcome's going to be. And you have other people, because you have to have the negative Nancy's, all like, oh man, Karrion Kross doesn't deserve this much attention. When you talk about deserved, life isn't about what you deserve, what you don't deserve, although I think that's also being way too mean and missing the point. Clearly people are interested because people are interested. Don't make me do my Batman thing again, which now I'm going to have to do because I may have a new viewer here. You cannot make the criticism this Batman game wouldn't be as good if Batman wasn't in it. Batman is in it. That's the reason why it's good. So you can say, well, just he's in it. Karrion Kross is the person and Scarlett is the person who has generated this debate and this speculation. And maybe if we had tried it with somebody else, it would have worked or it wouldn't have worked. But yes, the important thing is where it's happening. It comes off the R-Truth stuff. I genuinely think the WWE was shocked that the release of R-Truth created such a backlash, which still baffles me. Like, I try not to specifically comment on releases when they happen, apart from, man, I hope these people are okay. But I try not to put too much emotion into it because I don't want to take away the sadness of that particular person. But I was outraged when they released R-Truth. I thought it was terrible. I couldn't help it. Like, in a proper 2025 way, it overcame me and I had to tweet something like an absolute loser. And then obviously he got brought back and some of Triple H's comments kind of made it sound like it was meant to be a work. I don't think it was, right? I would say 99.9% no. They didn't think this was going to happen. At least they sorted it out, I suppose, but it's like the old saying, was it better late than never, but better never late? And then, of course, the Seth Rollins thing, which deliberately was, we are going to try and make people think, including in the company, it sounds like too, but again, I'm not backstage, so I can't talk about that definitively, but we are going to try and get everyone to believe that Seth Rollins is hurt, so when he arrives at SummerSlam and cashes in, I mean, it doesn't actually make sense from a wrestling story anyway, because CM Punk had been beaten half to death by Gunther. So, you know, Seth Rollins still could have walked down there and battered him with the briefcase and got the 1, 2, 3. But this is when wrestling becomes so interesting and when it becomes this weird meta sport / entertainment, because the idea was that we were surprised, and because we were surprised, Punk was surprised, and therefore the moment feels bigger, or better, I should say, and WWE is into their moments. This has always been the way. They are a moment-based company. But the idea was to trick you, right, in a brand new version of kayfabe. Because we all know what wrestling is. We all know it's predetermined, although I think most of the time, even 25, 30 years ago, people were aware of this. So what can we do to keep the suspense and keep the intrigue? I do not mind this, but I think you have to do it in once a year may even be too much. I think it's something you keep in your back pocket, and really all your attention should be on the stories. However, as these things always go down, Karrion Kross's and Scarlett's contract then expire, sort of 2 weeks, or the week after SummerSlam, I should say, and now here we are. Maybe they've left, maybe they haven't left, nobody's entirely sure. And I would suppose the big powder on the fire this week was Karrion Kross going on the Ariel Helwani show, and they talked about this as literally and as openly as they could. So, Karrion Kross says he hasn't spoken to AEW because he thinks most independent companies and people like AEW and I suppose TNA, I don't really know how the relationship with WWE works at the moment, haven't reached out to him. Some definitely had, or at least that's what he insinuated, but some haven't because they think the whole thing is part of a storyline that he talks about not being able to work his contract out with WWE, that he got an offer and he wanted sort of some information about how they came to whatever the figure it was, but then they rescinded it 24 hours later, which apparently, once again, speculative, does tie in to deals they've done with other people where it has got down to the wire and they offer them something, probably not expecting them to accept, and then it just goes away and everyone goes off in their different directions. So once again, this is why it's such an interesting story. You can argue it both ways. Either it really did happen and Karrion Kross and Scarlett fell into that boat, or WWE and Karrion Kross and Scarlett have sat down and gone, we are going to be so intricate with this that we are going to figure out what we would do if this was really happening, and we will follow all that beats before you return or whatever it may be down the line. So I don't know. The documentary is brilliant. I mean, I don't need to tell you to watch the documentary because I think it hit 1 million views or it's close to it. So you've probably already watched it. He's going to smash my views out the water. But what I think that did, more importantly than anything, like, again, before I move away from that point, I understand why we're doing this here because it was just the way his contract expired. And if you are going to do this, well, you can't wait 6 months. That doesn't work. I think all those three things we just mentioned are too squidged together. You want to space them out a little bit, but maybe it works out. We need to see. But in the documentary, our biggest takeaway, whether he's staying, whether he's going, TNA, WWE, Ring of Honor, Impact, New Japan, whatever it is, I think the missing piece of the puzzle, and I said this on social media too, is that Karrion Kross and Scarlett need to be presented as baby faces after everything that we've done. Because I mean, that documentary can be broken up and shown on Raw if he did go back, for example. You see, I think his real name is Kevin. I always feel bad talking about wrestlers in their real names. I think it's Kevin. I could be wrong. But you get to see the real person behind the mask. We can't say mask with Karrion Kross because Vince McMahon ruined that with the worst gimmick of all time. But you got to see the real life human being. And a man that clearly loves what he does, feels blessed to do what he does. You saw the relationship between him and Scarlett. You heard about his story. And I haven't read his book yet, but I've sort of seen a synopsis of it. It sounds like an incredible journey, to use the proper words. And I feel like when you have seen somebody that exposed, you can't then all of a sudden make them a character on television unless they're going to be properly over the top. I don't think that's where his or her strength lies. I think it is in this, even when they're with that weird group with Paul Ellering, which never really clicked, they were coming across like real human beings, even though it kind of did go spooky wooky. I mean, their entrance is quite spooky wooky, but again, mind games and all of that. So wherever he comes back, I just think he needs to be presented in that fashion. Don't have to change his name. He can be Killer Kross or Karrion Kross, but that's what I think anybody needs to do. Now, the interesting part is if he does come back to Raw or SmackDown, are there going to be some fans that do feel like they have the wall pull over their eyes, right? If you've totally bought into this and you've been going on social media and you're not grifting and you've been like, I can't believe WWE, this, blah, 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 what's going to happen is you're even going to be elated that he did go back there, or you're going to be like, I can't believe you did this. And that's why if he is going back to WWE, the whole thing does really need to have a plan from start to finish. It can't just come back and be wishy-washy, which to me, and I could be wrong again, is what a lot of the Sami Zayn stuff felt like, but maybe that was the point. And one of the big things that Karrion Kross talked about was originally he had a direct line of communication with Triple H. We saw how he treated him in NXT. That's no big surprise. And then at one point there was a middle guy, there was an intermediary, and he was talking through him, and therefore he wasn't able to get all his points across. He then cut the big, we'll call it work shoot promo against Logan Paul post-WrestleMania. All of a sudden he's being told that people backstage didn't know that it was a work. They thought maybe he'd gone into business for himself, and that Triple H didn't like it, so he had to hunt down Triple H, ironically hunt down the Hunter, and explain to him. And then he also went on to say that some people had said to him during that SummerSlam match, or before the SummerSlam match with Sami Zayn, you know, you've got this feeling in your tum-tum, and maybe this is going to be your last moment. You need to let the fans know it's going to be your last moment and say thank you. And Karrion Kross is like, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to go outside of the realms of my job. My job tonight is to put Sami Zayn over and make sure that it's his moment. So the whole thing is an absolute masterclass in pulling the wool over your eyes. Because even if he is a free agent, it still created intrigue. It's a little bit like the Montreal Screwjob, which is way too extreme. But Bret Hart going to WCW would have been interesting anyway. Bret Hart going to WCW post-Montreal Screwjob was like, what the flub are they going to do now? That's absolutely incredible. Then WCW screwed it up. We know the story. We don't need to go back to 97, 1998. But because Karrion Kross has this, you have to strike while the iron is hot. I really do not think you can wait till, what is it, August the 15th. I don't think you can wait like till September the 15th. Or maybe you can, maybe a month is okay. To me, maybe a month, maximum 2 months. because I think if the conversation goes away too much, then the impact in return doesn't come back. But actually, you could argue the opposite. Again, we can go back to 2011. CM Punk wins the WWE title in one of the best matches WWE ever did, especially from a story point of view. Kind of like this too. I'm sure this is the inspiration if it is part of the storyline. He leaves, and then he's back in 2 weeks to take on John Cena, who just beat Rey Mysterio for the brand new WWE title. 2 weeks was too soon. CM Punk in that moment could have vanished. So I guess what you have to really think about here is, does Karrion Kross and Scarlett need to get this conversation going? They've got a bunch of conventions booked, but no independent promotions at the moment. That could have changed by the time I'm talking to you. Is that enough? Do they just have to keep dropping things on social media? Does WWE need to tease it on TV? Are WWE expecting we want Kross chants at this week's episode of Raw? There's so many variables to this. And another report that came out literally before I sat down is that the few independent promotions that have reached out to Karrion Kross and Scarlett is that their prices are sky high. And because of the way they communicate with them, that maybe the whole WWE thing is a work and they're going to go back down there. Now, from my vantage point, I really don't mind. I mean, I mind from a personal point of view. I don't really want to lose their job, ever. Don't care who you work for. Wrestling is the most important thing here, which is why you don't want a monopoly in the industry. I want everyone to be paid well. I want everyone to be employed until the end of time. That's not realistic. That's me living in a fairyland. But I'm never going to sit here and go, I hope that guy or girl loses their job, because that makes you a sociopath and you have a problem, and you should probably go and see somebody about it. But just in terms of, as long as they're happy, it really doesn't matter to me, because I think he could go to TNA, he could be massive. I think he could go to be an AEW and be massive, because he's got this momentum. It's all about how you capitalize on it. So even if he does go back to WWE, if he walks through that door with Scarlett, and I don't even know who his opponent would be. I don't think you can go back to the Sami Zayn thing. Although I suppose you could. Like, if you want to come up with a dreamland scenario, Sami Zayn's about to win the World Championship and Karrion Kross screws him over. Now, I wouldn't do that, because again, I think he should be a babyface. But if we go back to this idea of moments, and I would say the R-Truth sort of getting rid of his hair was a massive thing because of the connotations and the historical context of that. But the Seth Rollins thing was meant to make you go, ooh, and do social media impressions. Even the Brock Lesnar thing is social media, oh, what can we do to create some noise? So if you get that right with Karrion Kross, you will do the same thing, because you can see on social media, you can see on forums, you can see on message boards. Today when I go, well, what should I make a video about? I'm like, I'm a couple of days late because I had a crazy week. But there's stuff that I want to say about Karrion Kross too. The most amazing fact is, I sit here and I kind of almost run out of things to say instantly, because you're just like, I don't know. I'm not 100% sure what they're doing. My worry is, as I go on a little bit of a tangent, is that it works so well, and then by December we're doing it again. If this does result in WWE taking back Karrion Kross, or he's still there, right, and the contract situation isn't real, you can't do it until end of 2026, as far as I'm concerned, because I always think, and it actually ties into the distractions, interference, confusions that, once again, in my opinion, are way too out of control in WWE. The focus always needs to be the story within the world of wrestling. I think we talked about this after the Netflix show. No problem with Dwayne Johnson coming out and being like, oh man, this is the greatest thing ever. But in my sort of fantasy land, it would be that if Dwayne Johnson is ever on WWE TV, he is The Rock. Like, you never see the other side of the face, much as if I'm watching a Breaking Bad or I'm watching any kind of drama on television. The actor never comes on the screen, but I can go outside of this world and see them being the actor and talk about the character. That's totally fine. But within the bubble, we remain in the bubble. I just think that's the greatest thing ever. And if The Rock had always been the final boss every time he's on Raw, I think that's how you're able to suspend your disbelief, even though deep down you know what you're seeing is all sort of part of the show. And that's what I want WWE to focus on 95% of the time. So I'm not saying they are, but if they feel like they're in a rut or they feel like they're struggling creatively, well, that's where you sit down and go, okay, what kind of story beat, or what kind of swerve, or what kind of twist, or what kind of match can we put on with a winner and a loser and no damn running that's going to capture the audience attention, as opposed from the fact, well, we can pretend that this person accidentally hurt this person, so on and so forth. Because there is a negative to all of this, which I don't put on Karrion Kross at all. I think he's making the best of his situation. Either way, and that's what you've got to do, especially in 2025 land. You've got to create noise and stay on that noise in order to, well, have attention, which is totally crazy, but that's how it works. But the Naomi thing then breaks, and is she injured? Is she not injured? Some people obviously have gone as far to say that maybe she's pregnant. I don't think you should ever do that. That is way too personal. Let Naomi announce it in her own time. But now we don't know. And then people say, well, what about the Seth Rollins thing? What about the R-Truth thing? What about the Karrion Kross thing? Which is why you do need to dial it down when you don't need to do it, because you don't want somebody tearing their ACL and the horrible accounts that do exist on social media, and you can't worry about them, but I still think they should be forefront of your mind as and when we'll start saying horrible things. Oh, not really injured. We don't need any of that, right? Sometimes we have to err on the side of the caution and just spend best wishes and hope people get better. But of course, we're not talking about anything like that. It's not a life and death situation. It's a job or no job situation, which of course it can be massive for Karrion Kross and Scarlett, especially because in that interview with Ariel Helwani, he really came across like he loved WWE, which also got people guessing because you're either pleading's a bit too strong, but you're either desperate to get a contract back there because that's where you want to ply your trade. Nothing wrong with that. He's allowed to make that choice. But if you were a free agent for real, in inverted commas, you probably wouldn't say something like that because you want to field offers again from TNA, Impact, Ring of Honor, New Japan, whoever it may be. If somebody were to put a gun to my head, I'd be like, you don't need to do that. I'm recording a video for free, so there's no need for weaponry. But I would imagine that this is going to result in Karrion Kross and Scarlett coming back on television. When I don't know, where I don't know. But I think they should be baby faces, which I do actually think makes it even harder because it's essentially a trick. And for them to reappear, like, what's their reasonings? I think that's the big question here, and this is what I will leave you with. Why did they do this? Slap your head when you say why. Like, what was the benefit here? What's he going to get out of it? Does he get a title shot? It doesn't have to be a world championship, but does he go after the IC title? Does he go after the US title? Like, who does he try and take down, and what was the purpose of this? Again, the Seth Rollins thing has holes in it, but you can explain it. The R-Truth thing was real, so you can move it to one side. But you can't just have him come back, and if he did, it would not be on him. I think he's too smart. But you can't have him come back and just go, ha ha, I did it for fun. Don't know why he's got Ricochet's laugh. You need to jump on it, and it has to have an incredible depth to it. It has to have an incredible intrigue, as I continue that word to it. So when you do look back on it, it's like when you get to the end of Usual Suspects, right? And you can rewatch it again, knowing who Kaiser Soze is, and it's like watching a different movie. That should be the thing with Karrion Kross. So if you wanted to be a massive geek and rewatch that Ariel Helwani interview, but oh my gosh, how did I not see that at the time? Or you saw the way that he left WWE, you read about the Logan Paul shoot, or you read about, again, this apparent relationship with Hunter Hearst Helmsley that went away and then came and then didn't go. And you can go back all the way to NXT when he's being pushed this massive star, but now he can't even keep his job in WWE. I love the fact that we can get into this. And I love the fact that it's essentially for the nerds online, which also makes me laugh because who's the first people to come out and say, we don't worry about the internet? It's the people in charge. Quite clearly they do care, but I understand it's all optics, it's all nonsense, it's all PR at the best of times. But it could be a super interesting situation, which, if I'm exaggerating a little bit, could kind of shift around wrestling at the moment and let other people who also may want to make some noise, well, you can do this, but let's just not overdo it, right? We understand that it's fiction, right? It's a fantasy world that we love to live in, but that means we can do anything within the confines of the show. Let's make sure most of the time we stick there. And then I think the Karrion Kross thing has been quite organic, right? Because the cheers for him didn't sort of just pop up. Well, they did kind of pop out of nowhere, but it was kind of the good promos he was doing. It was the, I guess, like the meta stories people were coming up with. And it says that Karrion Kross feuds with this guy, that guy goes back. Karrion Kross feuds with that guy. He was almost like reflecting their immorality, I suppose. Which is not a word, I don't think. He was reflecting their badness. Let's just talk like idiots here. And it all came from him, and I think people bought into that. And then when they found out his contract was going to end, there's a groundswell. But if WWE and wrestling as a whole is all about jumping on that stuff, then that's what we should do. And it doesn't matter where this happens, but you got to make sure that you time it right, and you got to make sure that you pick your spots, and you got to make sure it has a reason, right? Too many times in wrestling, someone has done something incredible, then gone shrug emoji. Which always reminds me of the Matt Hardy Edge stuff, which of course was very real, the stuff with Lita. And we came back and they had that kind of awesome grudge. I think it was a cage match, but it ended with Edge beating the absolute crap out of Matt Hardy. And, Vince McMahon's idea was people are going to be sympathetic to you because you got your ass whipped. Me personally, and again, not always right, rarely am, I was like, I think Matt Hardy needed to whip the guy who essentially stole his girlfriend away, as it was pitched to us. So, yeah, you got to stick the landing, is what I'm saying. But I think he will, especially if he can have his own, and Scarlett too, especially if they can have their own creative input into this. But we will see. And I think it's awesome in the sense that if he is a free agent, he has created all this hoopla, and hoopla in wrestling usually means more money for you, which is what he deserves. Now, this is going to be the most interesting comment section ever. I want to know what you think, right? I don't care. Okay, you don't have to care, but I clearly care because I'm talking about it. So give me your care opinions. Also, please do sign up to my brand new fitness channel. Just search for Simon Miller Fitness. There'll be a link down there as well. Otherwise, like the video, share the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you're into your fitness supplements, go to grillandmind.com/Simon. You go to Simon, get 10% off. I also have a watch-along Patreon thingamajig, patreon.com/Simon316. Otherwise, Simon316 on all social media platforms. Simon Miller on the Cameo, Simon J. Miller on TikTok, and Pro Wrestling Tees and Big Cartel for merchandise. And that is it. I appreciate you, my friends. Have a lovely weekend. I will check in with you after SmackDown. Talk to you then.